The cost of food is skyrocketing while the quality of food is dropping. So in order to combat this idea, many people are turning to gardening. You want to grow your own food. You want to control what your family's eating. You want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your money. But what exactly is it that you can grow that will take less time, less fertilizing, less input in general from you, and not waste your time and money? While our finances as the average American family may be getting tighter, our time is also getting tighter, so we don't really want to waste our time putting out a bunch of vegetable seeds and vegetable plants that we're not going to get that much return on. So again, what is our best investment and our worst investment in the garden? For me, the best investment is very simple. Green beans. It sounds very silly and cliche, but right here, these green beans right here will be your easiest vegetable to grow. Will take the least amount of fertilizing to grow. You will need to water them just to keep the plants growing, but nothing like an insane amount of water. They will grow fast. But a blue lake bush bean will grow in a little over 60 days, 65 days. Some varieties will grow a little faster, some will grow a little longer, but as a rule of thumb, a bush bean will produce beans within 70 days, very easily. So pretty easy on time. So a green bean, a bush green bean, will probably be your easiest and best investment, along with other things like, we'll say, lettuce and kale and spinach, those types of things. Very easy to grow. Seeds aren't very expensive. Don't need a ton of fertilizing. Just need to plant them and let them grow in the appropriate season. While lettuce isn't something you want to grow in the heat, by the way. Don't want to grow lettuce in the middle of summer. These right here are called white Dixie butter peas. They're a bush variety of what's called a butter pea that you don't really hear about all the time, but honestly, it's another great investment. Okay, it's a very, not exactly widely grown vegetable, but it's a high producer. They handle heat. They don't need they handle drought. They don't need a bunch of fertilizer all the time. You can almost plant these and let them go. Just almost plant them and let them go, and they'll grow almost anywhere. And you get a bunch of super nutritious food for very little time and money investment. And maybe you're thinking, look, okay, so you're telling me if I don't want to do much work or buy a whole lot of fertilizer, all I can really grow is a few greens, some beans, and this thing called a butter pea, right? That might be a little discouraging for you, but that's not exactly all. But if you want the simplest things, those are certainly the simplest things, and we will progress to the things that are still mediocre, fairly simple to maybe not as simple as you would like. Many people want the beautiful tomato. They always say, hey, how are your tomatoes growing? That's supposed to be like, it's the signal for how good of a gardener you are. That's how your tomatoes are doing, which isn't necessarily true, but people like the fresh homegrown tomatoes. Well, obviously we grow a lot of tomatoes right here. Tomatoes aren't exactly difficult to grow. I will tell you that it might take a little bit more time watering and maybe a little bit more fertilizer than your average green bean, but they're not exactly difficult, okay? So if you really want to garden and really want to grow some tomatoes, you'll be wanting to invest an extra little bit of time, very little time and very little fertilizing needed to get you some fresh tomatoes, okay? Now, again, premium, best tomato plants possible, all this other stuff, maybe you're going to go a little more in depth like we might. But if you just want some fresh tomatoes, you can go buy a few hybrid tomato plants and get yourself some fresh tomatoes fairly simply. Probably go and say fresh peppers, green peppers, green bell peppers, maybe jalapenos, whatever you're looking for, whatever kind of sweet pepper or spicy pepper you're looking for, you can grow also fairly simply. Maybe even more simply than the tomatoes. I'm not sure exactly. They're both pretty easy, but you can get yourself plenty of fresh peppers. Again, fairly simply. Right here on the lower end of our garden, we throw in a bunch of varieties. Looks just like bush beans, right? Looks like the same thing we had up there. Well, they are bush beans, but these are beans that are specifically used for shelling the beans, and you're going to get, dry beans or shelled beans out of these to do like baked beans. We'll say chili, all those things that you would buy regular beans out of the store for, just the plain shelled beans. You can grow right here in bush bean varieties. Certain varieties are for that. Now they take a little longer because you got to let them fully mature. But these, honestly, these are planted in the worst soil we have in our garden. They get the least amount of light that we have in our garden, right? So we can just kind of get them down here, let them sit here for maybe 80 days, okay? 80 to 90 days almost. And they're gonna produce plenty of dry beans, nutritious, healthy beans for us to use, and at not much cost. You see the theme here? We're trying to make sure seeds don't cost you a bunch, trying to make sure that you're not gonna have to input a bunch of water or a bunch of time into watering and fertilizing, not have to buy a bunch of extra fertilizer, because we're talking about if you're looking to produce food the most efficient ways possible, right? With the least amount of time and money invested. Obviously, we don't necessarily do that here because we plant a lot of food, so we're gonna have to put a lot of time in, but a lot of people don't have that kind of time to do so. And now many people want to grow squash and zucchini, right? Obviously, we've had something eating on these zucchinis right here, or these zucchinis right here doing great. But are they easy to grow all the time? Squash, yellow squash and zucchini are kind of funny that way. Now they're both a summer squash, to be honest with you, but they're kind of funny in that manner is that you feel like it should be easy to grow them, right? But they might take a little bit more fertilizer than you would like to produce throughout the year. They might require a little more watering than you would like to produce throughout the year for longevity. And also, they have to be pollinated. Okay, you have male and female blossoms. This is where things can get a little tricky with them sometimes, is that it should naturally be pollinated. We should have plenty of bees and plenty of pollinating insects that can easily pollinate our food. It doesn't really happen that way, unfortunately. Like, we live in a neighborhood here. It's not a massively suburban neighborhood. It's a fairly simple neighborhood, okay? But it's still people around here who are trying to take care of their lawns, trying to grow grass and not food, and they like to spray weed killer. And maybe you do too, I don't know. But there's where it gets difficult, is weed killer kills our pollinators. See, we need these guys. Going through its clover, getting everything it needs, and then eventually it'll make its way to our fruits and vegetables that need pollinating. Haven't seen a ton of bees this year. That's because our neighbors, maybe one or two of our neighbors, probably use Roundup or something to kill weeds. I get it, I understand it, but it makes it more difficult to grow some of our delicious homegrown fruits and vegetables, like squash and zucchini. While the squash and zucchini are wonderful, we love them. We might love them a little bit more than the average person and use them different ways than the average person might use them. They're vital to what we do. We love them, and we'll freeze them and everything else, and we use them quite a bit. Also, cucumbers. This back trellis here will have cucumbers on it. Maybe see a couple of plants growing up a little bit. Cucumbers are the same way. They're gonna require a little more fertilization for longevity. Okay, you can get a few cucumbers no matter what, I would believe, but you're gonna need a little more fertilization than maybe the average person wants to put into it to have cucumbers deeper into the season. And they do require a lot of water. Cucumbers need a lot of good amount of water, but if you love cucumbers, it's well worth it. But just be aware that they will require extra fertilizing, they will require a little extra watering, and they do need pollinating. You have male and female blossoms on those too. So to be clear, when pollinating cucumbers, melons, and squashes, you have a female blossom and a male blossom. The female blossom comes out of the plant with the fruit attached to it and will blossom out. The male blossom will not have the fruit attached to it on the backside. Okay, you will need a pollinating insect to go from the male blossom to the female blossom, back and forth of one of your squashes. Okay, it's like if you have 5 yellow squash plants, it'll need to hit a male blossom somewhere and then go to a female blossom and cross-pollinate those 2 blossoms. Okay, now you can do that by hand. Angela Kay will do that by hand if she feels like she needs to, because we know you need pollinating, right? And so she's afraid that we don't have enough pollinators out here, which maybe this year, we're not sure. She will come out here and hand pollinate with a Q-tip and go back and forth. So you can't do that, but that's also more time investment if you're not looking to do that, and you maybe don't feel like you have time to babysit and these blossoms like that. Maybe that's something to think about. Now, as I mentioned, melons are one of those things that need a bunch of water, a bunch of fertilizer, and pollinating, right? And we have melons growing, or plants growing, right? I mean, plenty of people, like us, honestly, envision being able to grow juicy watermelons, cantaloupes, honeydew. We have all this planted, right? Sounds wonderful. It really does take more fertilizer than what you would like, okay? they do. Now, some people might say, well, I've never had any problem with it. I hope you haven't. That'd be wonderful. There are people who just can grow them however. I don't know how. Maybe it's just your soil's better. I don't get it. But typically, they will take more watering and more fertilizing than the average person may want to invest, okay? Just plain and simple, it's real. And it can be a little tricky to figure out when a watermelon's ready to pick. So it may not be something that you're really want to invest in if you're just looking to have a garden planted that doesn't take a lot of time and effort, honestly. Now I got one more vegetable that I'm gonna cover here because it is the most inefficient vegetable to grow in your backyard. And it's the lovely sweet corn. All right, the seeds aren't super expensive, honestly, but they take a massive amount of fertilizer. They really do, okay? And it can be very frustrating for people to plant all these seeds and see good looking corn stalks. The plants come up, look fine, but then the corn comes out and it's just puny and you don't have a whole lot of kernels on there, the ears aren't full, and they may honestly be 3 or 4 inches long ears of corn. It can be highly frustrating. And I've been there a lot. That is the most inefficient vegetable for you to grow in your backyard. Okay, just simply is. Out of one stalk of corn, you might get 2 ears. They may not be very big ears, may not be full ears of corn, and you're gonna feel like you wasted your time and efforts trying to get there. Now, I'm stubborn enough to keep trying, okay? And I want people to be stubborn enough to keep trying. I'm just saying, if you're looking to have a hands-off garden or a very little hands-on garden, corn is not the vegetable to grow, all right? So you gotta remember that. The easiest ones to grow, right, it's gonna be beans of any kind, whether it be dry shelled beans or green beans. Then you're gonna have greens of any kind, but you have to make sure you grow those in the cooler air. Okay, you can't have a bunch of 85 to 95 degree temperatures. Also, we'll say English peas, sweet peas, shelling peas, or sugar snap peas. We can throw those in there as well. They're pretty simple, but they need not terribly hot weather. Okay, so those, then you can kind of also do butter peas. Everybody needs to grow butter peas. Super good, nutritious. Those are easy to grow. Tomatoes and peppers aren't so bad. They're fine. But cucumbers, melons, squashes, and corn will take a little more time than maybe you're looking to put into if you're looking for a very little hands-on garden. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. My name is Jason. This is Art of Creation Homestead. We love y'all. God bless you and goodbye.